Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I can't believe that this is the last episode of Everyday Heroes for the year. I don't understand how quickly this has gone. It has been amazing speaking to everyone, and I have absolutely loved every second of it. But I just wanted to let you know that today we have someone who's going to blow your mind. Okay. Someone who has had a long history, just going to go live over here, a long history and a long career dealing with kids and dealing with children with unique challenges. And that to me holds a very special place in my heart because he is someone who not only is able to read people, but being able to read children and know where their strengths lie. Because so often than not, most of us are always being told where the deficits are, where the challenges lie. And I love this person so much because he looks at all the positive things that come out of children and what they are, what they can do and what the possibilities are, as opposed to the deficits. So don't want to leave you waiting any longer. So today we are dealing with and chatting with David Hannan. He is the founder of Kids in Motion. His career has spanned like 40 years, right? He is an epic rock. Can you believe that, Dave?
I don't look that old.
No, it's all the Nivea, I'm sure. It's all good. But, Dave has been dealing with rock. He's an expert rock climber, and he really got involved in working with children with unique challenges at around, 1997. So just take us back a little bit, Dave, and talk to us a little bit about, your career, first of all, and what you did previous to Kids in Motion, and then what brought you into starting Kids in Motion.
Yeah, great. First off, congratulations on your podcast. It's a great.
Thank you.
And you almost
I
got
love
me
it.
all teary in the intro, hearing all those nice things.
Well.
I started coaching in '85. I started coaching gymnastics. The younger kids. One of our senior coaches left through politics, and I started teaching the under 8s and the under 12. And I loved it. I loved coaching. Are we all good with that noise?
Oh, can you hear something? Okay, let me just see if I can block it out. Hang
on. Okay. Great. Yeah. And I started coaching way back then, and then I started with gymnastics, and I really enjoyed gymnastics. We were more of a rec club than a competitive club. So I think from a really early age, we probably only went in one competition a year as a club. This was Mordialloc Youth Club. We used to pull out all our equipment, put it away. So I think part of being in a club like that really enabled you to love the sport for what the sport was and what it gave you, more so than the external rewards of competitions and things like that. And then I moved over into I was working in a circus and doing flying trapeze and teaching flying trapeze for a couple of years through Club Med, which was great. And I've continued sort of teaching some of that over the years. And then there was teaching some rock climbing. And then I got into personal training when I came back in '96 and taught adults for many years. And one of the adults I was teaching asked if her clients, one of her clients' children were being homeschooled. And they were way out in Belgrave South, and there was 2 families combined, and they said, would you be interested in going out and running a sports program? And at that stage, I thought, well, sure. They were a lot younger than I was used to. I was usually used to working with kids sort of 10 and over or 8 and over. Some of these kids were I think there was a 4, a 6, and 8 and a 12-year-old, something like that. And what I quickly realized was that I had to expand my knowledge. I couldn't just teach them gymnastics and circus and rock climbing because that's not how most children socialize. Most children socialize in school based around running games and ball skill games. So I had to take what was great about gymnastics and combine it with these other elements. And that's kind of how Kids in Motion started.
I love that so much. And Kids in Motion now has exploded into, you go in there at any given time and there are a ridiculous amount of children. And I know that for when my Angel Boy started Kids in Motion, we started doing the groups and it became pretty clear that that was too much for him. There was too much sensory stuff going on and it didn't work for him. So we opted to do, the one-to-one and the private sessions. He just killed it. And I love that all of your coaches have so much empathy and so much understanding and so much inclusiveness around what it looks like to coach a child with additional needs, because that's really what we're looking for as parents. We're looking for coaches who get it, right? We don't have to we don't have to explain it. We don't have to try and apologize for their behavior. We don't have to try and figure out why they're stimming and doing this. Your coaches just get it. And I think that is a clear difference for Kids in Motion versus what other organizations have done or have created. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think I was lucky because I discovered that by accident. I was teaching, I think it was the Pratt's grandchildren. So that, and they had lots of connections, and one of their cousins had a child who had Fragile X. So this is 98 or something like that. I'd never heard of that. Back then, it wasn't all linked under the one umbrella. They were all quite separate. And so the father said, we've got an in-ground trampoline. Would you be interested in coming to teach, young boy Harley? Would you be interested in teaching him, and running a session for him? And I said, well, look, I don't really have experience in that field, but I'll come and give it a shot. I'm always up for a challenge, and I'll let you know at the end whether it was good or not. So we played a whole lot of games on the tramp, and I tried to show him how to do some skills and get him engaged. And for 90% of the session, he was looking elsewhere and didn't seem to really sort of. I thought this session was a failure. The dad came and said, how did it go at the end? And I said, oh, I'm not too sure. I don't know how much he really retained. And he said, wow, he's got a huge smile on his face. It looks like he really enjoyed it. Like, can you come back next week? And I said, well, if you think it's going to be worthwhile, I definitely will. And I went back the next week, and probably a good 70% of what I thought that he wasn't retaining, he remembered and he could do. And so I quickly learned that, just because he's not standing still and looking me in the eye and paying attention doesn't mean he wasn't, learning. And so through that experience, I really learned that, how much as a coach you get from teaching. You learn patience and you learn empathy, and you learn to, as you said in introduction, to how to read body language and to read it a little faster when they're getting frustrated, and to read it when they're really engaged, so that you go, wow, I was only going to do this activity for 5 minutes, let's do it for 15. They're really into it. And I think that's what you kind of get. And so when I started my business and I started to bring some coaches in, I thought that teaching experience is one thing, but I think probably to be a great coach, you need two other things. I think having some sort of like theatre background is really important, because you learn to express everything in your tone and your voice and your body language. And, kids read that a lot more than what you're saying. And then the third thing I thought was really good was to make sure that all my coaches spend some time and had the opportunity to work with children with additional needs, because that really taught them the patience and the creativity and as you say, the ability to read, body language and things like that. And it just made them a more well-rounded coach. So that was great for me, because I thought it was a way to progress my coaches. But I also knew what I got from it was like some of my favorite sessions ever. There's so much joy, and just in little moments. 90% of the classes doesn't go the way the way you were thinking it was going to go and the way it was planned. And then 10% of it goes off track and was better than you thought. And like, you think at the end, you're like, wow, that was one of my best sessions ever. So yeah, the joy in it, I just knew that the coaches would help them find a love for teaching as well. Sorry, that was
no, I love it. I love your passion about it. And I do agree that children, autistic or otherwise, are reading adults' body language, right? They're hardwired to learn body language before they learn words, because that's how we were back in the old, back in the caveman days. You're reading someone's body language before you're able to read the words. So let's get into it. I wanted to ask you, so what role does physical activity play in the overall development of children, especially those with unique or special needs?
Good question. obviously they're going to, develop their motor skills and motor skills, depending on, just for example, if they've got if they're weak in their upper body or in their grip strength, that has a correlation to handwriting. So then they're improving in other areas, and just, their physical development, crossing their body line. It's so great for brain development. Then there's, the social aspect that they get from it. There's the confidence they get from it. There's, the understanding structure. So there's just, there's the mental, benefits as well. So there's so much, so it can't be underestimated. It's not like, oh, well, they're only going to get 5% of what, everyone else gets from it. It's not the way it is.
Absolutely. And there's so much research to support rock climbing, especially that climbing motion of where you're putting your feet and where you're putting your hands, and that motor planning and what's going on in your brain. There is so much research to support that. So it's not just like a fun after school activity. It's really scientifically based.
Yeah, and whether you're young or you're old, they've shown when you're old, to keep your brain active, you could do Sudoku and crosswords. Or it's just as valid to be learning a new skill or improving at an old skill. It keeps your brain just as active. So for kids, it's the same. The rock wall isn't a strength exercise. It's a physical problem solving exercise. So they're doing all of that and making all those calculations, yet getting all the physical benefits as well. So that's why I love it.
And I also love the fact that getting to the top, right? And like there's a space where you can pop your hand and high five the wall. To be able to get to the top, most of these kids, don't get that recognition of I've achieved something huge, right? Too far often, where they're in their classroom, they're probably not achieving as much as their typical peers. They probably feel like they don't have that self-confidence, but at Kids in Motion, they can really harness that. And that's the beautiful part about it, that they can really shine there and they can be, praised for to get to the top of the wall when, I've seen some typical kids who couldn't get to the top of the wall because they're scared or they're, frightened or whatnot. And I think that's such a confidence boost. So I love that.
It's a massive, can I tell a little story? Yeah, it's a massive confidence boost. We had this boy, he was in his teens and he had Tourette's, and he kept, getting halfway up the wall. And I'd sort of noticed it. So one day I just sort of threw on my harness and helped out the class and climbed with him. He got to the top. He was really excited. The following week, his grandma, because his grandma brought him, his parents were sort of having troubles and they'd split up, and it was always his grandma who brought him. And she brought in these chocolates. And I'm like, whoa, who are these for? I was thinking that, one of the team, it was their birthday and I was a bad boss and I'd forgotten. And she's like, oh, it's for you. It's like, me? What have I done? I said, oh, we helped, Will to the top of the wall last week. I was like, it's all right. It's my job. She's like, no, you don't understand. Like, his teacher came to us this week. And I always get emotional telling the story. And she's like, and this was like 8 years ago, this story. So I don't know, it still chokes me up. And the teacher's like, what? She said, Will's had this amazing week. There was like 3 separate things in school across different class, subjects that he was really struggling with, and he sort of plateaued and he sort of like hit a wall. And she said, this week he got all 3. And then she asked him why. And he was like, because I got to the top of the wall. And I was like, that was a big moment for me, because I went, wow, the momentum of like confidence, is just so powerful, and it translates much further than we kind of, even coaches, we just kind of see and we think, oh, this is why it's good. It's going to help them here and help them here. But it was the first time my eyes were really open to, oh, it's helping in so many other areas. So that's why, we kind of changed and called ourselves a confidence program rather than a sports program.
Don't mind me over here, Dave. I'm just having a bit of a cry. It's so true, right?
It's great.
We want to see our children succeed, and sometimes that doesn't always translate into, the classroom. It doesn't always translate into their everyday life. But when they can succeed, it fills them with so much happiness, and it fills you as a parent with so much happiness that they're succeeding.
Yes.
I love that.
And you know yourself, like when you achieve the most in life is like when you step into challenges, is when you're feeling confident. And if you've succeeded a little bit and you've got a little bit of confidence, you take on that next challenge, even though originally you thought it was going to be too big. Well, it's no different for kids with additional needs. You give them confidence somehow, and it's going to translate into sort of more areas. So, yeah.
I love that so much. So can you just tell me, how do you design movement programs to cater children with varying degrees or different diagnoses?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there's, it can depend. If like we're given a physio reports and other sorts of reports, I can take that, I can read through it, and I can kind of design a program based around what they're suggesting that they're sort of behind in and what they need more work in. And I can take exercises and say this exercise would be great to help build them in this area. And so what I tend to do, because we've got like sort of different areas of the gym, I will plan like almost like even though we're only doing a 1 hour class, I'll try to plan a 2 hour class just so that I don't get stuck anywhere and I'm having to kind of make it up and it's obvious to the student that, oh, I don't know what to do next. So I'll over plan my first class and I'll take whatever's working, I'll go with. And if I'm doing something and it's, it's kind of like, they have an idea and I'm like, oh, well, I wasn't going to take the drill in that direction, but that's a really good idea. Let's go that way. Then I'll sort of stay with that for a little longer and then just move everything they had in the lesson plan and I'll just keep pushing it back and I'll draw on it in like, week 3 or 4. But a lot of it is like planning, but then reading and then just sort of making it up a little bit. Making it up sounds like we don't know what we're doing, but in some cases we don't know what we're doing. We're putting things out there. We're being really observant to see what's working and what's not in terms of, what they're engaged with and what we can get them to stick at a little bit longer because they need it. And then we're trying to build on that and then disguise it so we can do it in 5 different ways, but they're still doing kind of the same thing and getting the same benefits. So that's kind of my approach.
I love the way I interpret that. When you say making it up, I say it's intuition. That as a coach, you're using that intuition to be able to read what's going on with the child, because so much of it with kids, especially with autistic kids, whether they're non-speaking or not, a lot of it is intuitive. And so, that's the case even with classroom teachers. If you've got that intuition and that you're able to pick up on what works and what doesn't work and checking in, are they dysregulated? Are they regulated?
Yep.
What's working today? What happened, in terms of them? There's so much to it. It's not just okay, child, here you go. This is your class. Go have fun. There's so many layers to when it comes to a child, especially with a child with autism. And I think that's why the coaches at Kids in Motion do really well, because they've got such high intuition. So I think that's great.
Yeah, and that's part of what you need to teach your coaches, because I'll watch a class and I'll see that the class is slowly starting to get out of control, even when it's a regular class and we're not doing an additional needs class. And I'm thinking, if they let this go, I can see that they're going to have to reel it all back and stop it. And I can see it sometimes 20 minutes before it gets out of hand. And I think to myself, wow, gee, that's the difference. Coaches just can't see it. And so you have to educate them what to look for in terms of, you're allowing them to call out and speak over the top of you. If you allow that, then this happens. Sometimes it's important to allow that because they want to really tell you something and then that's how they build a bond. But other times it's just they're trying to be the one in control. So, yeah, I guess that's...
Yeah, I love that. I do love that. It's so true. What are the key benefits of incorporating movement and sports into the lives of children, especially autistic children?
Well, one of the biggest benefits we spoke about before is just that the building of confidence and a building of self-belief. I think that's the best thing you can do is to, the greatest gift you can give somebody is to give them some belief in themselves. As a leader for my team, I'm trying to do that to get them to believe in their abilities. As a coach, often they don't think they have what it takes. those who are stepping into new roles, I'm trying to get them to believe that they have the ability to, to do a new role and to lead others. And for the kids, we're trying to get them to believe that they can achieve a skill, but also, if they put themselves out of their comfort zone, it's going to be okay, and they can pick themselves back up if it doesn't work. So, yeah, I think for me, it's self-belief.
Yeah, I love that. And I also think that, and this is just my theory, but I suspect that if we had a lot more children with a lot more self-belief and a lot more self-confidence, there would be a lot less bullying, right? Because they hadn't feel the need to want to bully. So therefore, if you believe in yourself, there's no need to lash out at anyone else. But that's just my theory. So, take how do you think parents can identify the type of physical activity for children, and again, especially for autistic children? Like, how do parents spot what is right for their kids and what isn't right?
The same way a coach does, like, as I said, I'm making it up, same way a coach does in a class. You just got to learn to watch. And whatever a child is really engaged with, what do they get lost in? Like when they're playing for 5 hours at that same thing, with a spoon and a tennis ball or whatever it is, like, what are they engaged in? And it's the same for us. What do we find our flow in, where we think we've been doing it for me, I can go rock climbing and someone goes, wow, we've been climbing for 4 hours. I'm like, really? It feels like 40 minutes. But I just get lost in it. So it's just watching, and not thinking that and then going, okay, well, what is it? What element of that activity, why do they enjoy that? What is it? Is it the building element of the activity? Is it the creative element? Is it the complete chaos of it? What element of it is it that they really enjoy? And how can I maybe find similar activities that are like that? Or just, because sometimes they can't, necessarily verbalize why they can do that same activity for hours. But I think that's just, it's just kind of watching them, and where do they get lost, and where do they, fall into their flow state, and then, looking for ways to reinterpret that.
Yeah, I think it's great, because far too often, sometimes parents are, and this is from what I've seen with my clients and with myself, that if you are in that state of overwhelm, you're not going to be in that flow state. So you can't pick up intuitively what is going on for your child, right? When we're in that massive fight or flight or freeze, then you're not able to perceive what's happening around you. And so therefore everything just sort of, like, the fine details go slipping by and you can't really see what's happening. Okay, so last question, and then we're going to get to rapid fire questions. So what advice would you give parents who are looking for progress in relation to their child's physical and emotional development?
2 bits of advice. One is to be patient, and just, it's that, it's going to take time, and there, sometimes a slower progression at the start leads to faster progression later on, in a certain area. So, just take a deep breath. And the other one is, to be looking to highlight wins so that the child recognizes, because we all, what motivates everyone is to see ourselves accomplish things. Wow, I'm getting a little bit better. That's what sort of keeps us engaged. So highlight those, little wins to the kids, and then not feel like there's another form of measurement, i.e. another child who has something similar, or, they're just the measurement is, where were they, last month or last week, and where are they now? So.
And it's true, because parents, and I put my hand up, okay, I am not immune to this, but we want to go from here all the way over here, right? We want to get to the end line straight away. We want to get to the finish line. Come on, like, why isn't these results happening as fast as we need? But it doesn't work like that, right? We do need to look at it as incremental, what's happening with the child. And then also, they're learning. Like, you don't look a baby and say, why aren't you walking already? Like, hurry up. Like, no one's says that to a baby. So why would we think to say that to a child with special needs? Like it's stress, but we do, right? Because we want them to hurry up because we're so, as parents, sometimes, not always, but sometimes we can be like, we're falling behind. We can see our typical peers and we just want to catch up. And that is that comparison piece, which, like Roosevelt said, right? Comparison is the thief of all joy, right? It will just destroy your life. So just working on what works for the child. Okay.
They may be behind in 10 areas, but the one area that they're really into, they'll progress much faster because that's what they're obsessed about. So don't worry, that might be the area that they don't need to, like, a guy who's amazing at martial arts might be terrible at cooking and working a washing machine, but it doesn't. That's how he's made his career, or an actor, or whatever. You only have to be really great at one thing to kind of get by.
And that's the beauty about it, right? As parents, we only need to focus on that one niche, right? Once you can find what that niche is, then just really pour into it, because you're not going to be a jack of all trades. You're going to be just one thing. You're just going to be doing really well in one area. Because like you take an engineer, the engineer isn't the receptionist and the office manager and the director. No. We're not all these jobs. We're just that one person. Okay, so we're going to do our rapid fire questions. So if you could give one piece of advice to parents listening today, what would it be?
It's to be kind to themselves, to take patience, look after themselves. They're the franchise player. If they go down, the whole ship goes down. So, and they also, if they're overwhelmed, like you were saying before, they don't have the opportunity to recognize those niches and those subtleties. So take a deep breath, sometimes take a step back. It's like being a boss. If your head's, sometimes you need that clarity time so that you can make the right decision or see what you need to see.
I hope everyone heard that. I hope all of my listeners are really taking stock of that, because we do, especially this time of year. It's Christmas time. There's a lot going on. Everyone's stressed. People on the roads are crazy. Just take a breath.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job.
Exactly.
Reward yourself.
What's the most surprising? Pardon?
So just reward yourself and tell yourself that, as well.
I love it. What's the most surprising thing you've learned from working with an autistic child?
Just how much joy there is in taking it. I think that's probably the thing, and that it doesn't have to go to plan. And you just have to have that one moment of success, and that one moment, even though it was only 5 minutes of an hour session or whatever, can actually have a big impact the following week. So, yeah.
And that really translates to parents when they receive a diagnosis, right? Because receiving an autism diagnosis isn't usually on the plan, right? It's not usually part of the bigger picture. No. And so, we are like given this diagnosis, and then you've got to figure out a different way. And I often say this, and I've said it a few times on the podcast, is that an autism diagnosis is not a tragedy, right? This is not something to be looked upon like it is the worst thing in the world. We just need to change the way that we do things to ensure that this child will thrive. That is all there is to it. Like, we just need to tweak a couple of things. It's not as bad as what people will tell you to be. Yeah.
No. They often have the funniest and the most vibrant and interesting outlooks, and it's great.
No, they do. They definitely do. Okay, what sport would you encourage children with unique needs to go into first? Now, I understand that this is obviously quite a broad question, but is there like one particular sport that you would say you should definitely go and start them in this first?
That's a really good question. I tend to think of gymnastics and swimming both as safety sports. Swimming's obvious. All parents think of swimming as a safety sport. I think of gymnastics as a safety sport because there's no point in your life where you're not going to have some sort of nasty fall. Whether you're a child or whether you're an adult and you come off a bike. So, and you can't fight gravity. So for those two, I think they're probably, the most important. Having an element, gymnastics because of that reason, swimming obviously because we're always around waters. And then some sort of ball sport because of that hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, definitely. And is there, or do you have a mantra or a quote that you live by?
That I live by. Wow. I used to have a whole lot of quotes on my wall when I was young from Russian gymnasts and things that said, those who do not risk do not succeed. And the one that's probably most relevant to me was a Bruce Lee quote, a book up here somewhere, um, which was in relation to, he said, absorb what's useful, discard what isn't, and make the rest uniquely your own. And that's what I kind of did with starting the business and changing around gymnastics. But I think that applies to taking a class for children with additional needs. Absorb what's useful, discard the other things that aren't necessary, like pointing your toes or getting it perfect, or that skill isn't necessary because of where they need to develop, and then turn that lesson into something that's uniquely their own.
Yes, and there's far too, who wants to be like somebody else? No one wants to be like somebody else. Let's be unique. Let's be who we
Yes.
are so that we can show the world. Because I tell you, I don't want to be like anybody else. And I don't think any child wants to be like anybody else. So I really, really love that. Now, Dave, where can people find Kids in Motion?
Kids in Motion, well, obviously, the website, www. Do you have to say that anymore these days? kidsinmotion.com.au. And we've got all the information on there. We're also in Port Melbourne. We only have one studio. I much prefer to have one studio and keep it all under sort of one building and do it well, rather than having multiple and having it sort of watered down. So we've got one studio in Port Melbourne, and that's kind of the best place they can find us. If they want any information, about the classes or about our, we often run privates. We tend to do sort of an introduction class, to work out sort of where we need to go. So the best thing is to sort of send an email through to reception@kidsinmotion.com.au, and with any information, questions, and we kind of get back to you there.
Awesome. And I believe that your Instagram handle is Kids in Motion. Is that correct?
I'm not on Instagram myself. So.
I'm just going to say yes because it is.
I'm going to say yes.
That's fine. Oh, Dave, is there anything that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, we've got some over summer. We do a holiday program, but also it's a really great opportunity because we run from 9 till 5. Normally our classes are finishing at sort of 7 or 8 at night, but we do some special needs or additional needs classes or privates with kids. So that's, we come back in January. I think it's the 12th or the 13th. I think it's, and that'd be a great opportunity for anyone who wants to do like a initiation, come in for an introduction or to do an assessment. That'd be a great opportunity because we just have a lot of time, because normally during the term, it's really hard to find time because we're so heavily booked.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can absolutely agree. It is very busy during the term. So, parents, if you are listening to this and you want to book in with Kids in Motion, definitely, like Dave said, either email them or give them a call or head to their website. But as I was saying, if it's outside of term, it's a really good time to just check in with Dave, check in with the coaches, see what's going on, see if it's the right fit for your child, and just give it a go, because I think at the moment, where parents are desperately looking for sports or some other activity that their child can really thrive in. And I think the Kids in Motion does a really good job of that. So if there is any parents out there, regardless, it's not just for a diagnosis of autism. Obviously, Kids in Motion will take children of a variety of different diagnoses and what they can do and their abilities. And so I think there's so much benefit to be had. But Dave, thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. And
thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Have a Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to you soon.
See you, Nat. Bye.
Bye, Dave.